What's good, my fellow human beings? My name is Shannon, also known as Love Little Beat, and I welcome you to my very first Storytime animation video. Yay! Hooray! Good
Yay!
for me! Yay! Good for me! Yay! Now, after all that celebrating, let's get straight to the point. Fears. Fears are weird things when you really think about it. Your brain decides randomly, often in bed at night after waking up for no discernible reason at 3 a.m., to be like, hey, someone could just come into your house and murder you right now and no one can stop them. Like, whoa, bro, chill. I was just trying to fall asleep while listening to Golden Girls on my phone. Like, why do you have to attack me like that?
Thank you for being a friend.
Honestly though, I've been an anxious and fearful person since I was a small child. Once I woke up in the middle of the night with the TV on when a preview for a Chucky movie came on, and I've been traumatized by him specifically ever since. Like, no lie, I still have nightmares about him on occasion. And when my mind is bored of scaring me with normal human murderers, it's like, hey, Chucky is small enough to fit under your bed. He's probs under there right now waiting for you to go to sleep so he can give you a little stabby stab. And remember, according to the plot of the movies that you for some reason decided to read on Wikipedia one day, he can pretty much just never be killed. I also have very specific childhood memories of going to a store a few times, and they had a bunch of decorations on the ceiling, and one of them was a Chucky doll, and I would just stare at it in fear and morbid curiosity. So Chucky has pretty much been haunting me my whole life. Also, I think that store was probably a Spencer's. It feels like it would be a Spencer's. A fear that's funny to me now is a fear that I had of E.T. when I was 8 or 9 years old. I had seen the E.T. movies before that and never had a problem with him, but for whatever reason I had developed this fear of E.T. and he just freaked me out. I was a theme park kid, and every time we'd go to Universal Studios I was simultaneously afraid of seeing Chucky and E.T. I remember moving to hide behind my parents while we were walking around Universal Studios one day because there was this cart stuffed to the brim with E.T. plushies. I don't even remember what freaked me out about him so badly. The one thing I do know, though, is the way I made myself get over this fear was to picture E.T. as an old lady that hit people with his purse. This image tickled me so greatly that my fear was gone, and I was very, very proud of this. I have OCD, so you can imagine some of the other less funny fears I've had over the years. I've had pretty much almost every type of OCD intrusive thought that there is, and that led to many, many searches on Google in my youth with questions like, why does my brain think thoughts that I don't want? And worried I did something really bad in my past but didn't. I'm 14 years old Googling these things. I'd like to talk about these things in a more OCD-centered video, but one of my worst intrusive thoughts that played on my very worst fear was going to hell. When I was 16 and had freshly accepted Christ as a young woman, I started getting horrible intrusive thoughts that I had committed the unforgivable sin somehow, and that I was going to hell. I had such horrible panic attacks and lost so much sleep over this that my mom had to sleep in my room with me because I literally couldn't fall asleep on my own. God has since dismissed this fear in me, with guiding me to a lot of mental health resources and through prayer, but that was probably the worst fear I've ever dealt with. But back to more comical fears. My brain is funny because it'll make connections on its own just for the sake of making me afraid. I was on a plane flying to Korea in the summer of 17 when the whole Ebola thing was happening, and the news was talking about people purposely getting sick with Ebola and going to public places trying to make as many people sick as possible. So there I am, 20 years old, sitting on a mostly empty plane when an elderly man 3 rows in front of me starts coughing, and instantly my mind is like, oh shoot, he's one of the evil Ebola men trying to get everyone sick and kill us all. Man, he must be disappointed at how empty this flight is. Doesn't matter, I'm stuck with him. And then I proceeded to put on my face mask that I had bought a few years earlier so I could have cool airport fashion like Luhan from the K-pop group EXO, and wore that mask the entire rest of the flight to Korea. Except for meals, of course, because the risk of Ebola apparently wasn't enough to stop me from consuming the surprisingly yummy airplane food. Being a theme park kid with crippling anxiety also meant that anytime I went on a roller coaster or Ferris wheel, I was simultaneously having a great time and wondering if this would finally be the time the coaster went off the tracks like it did once in 2002, or that our swinging Ferris wheel cart would fling off, and would it be better if we landed in water, and could my family and I jump out in time into said water to live? And I know I'm not the only one that has not been able to go to a movie theater without worrying about someone bringing a gun in since 2012. My husband's brain, unfortunately for him, works much like mine does. We'll be hanging out in the living room with my parents and brother, and he'll suddenly be transported into his mind to a scenario of someone trying to break in, and how he would try to keep everyone safe. I've had similar scenarios go through my head during perfectly normal situations as well. I really realized how my husband's mind works like mine when we were discussing this apartment we'd like to rent. He asked me if we had the choice, would I prefer the first or second floor? And I thought about it and replied saying that though it'd be more difficult to move our things to a second floor apartment, we'd have more time in the event of someone breaking in, and there's less of a chance of someone trying to break in through the windows. And instead of looking at me like I'm a crazy person, he was just like, yeah, that's a good point. I love my husband so much. I also have really bad health anxiety. My husband, trying to help me with this, has asked me to stop Googling my symptoms whenever I don't feel well. And if I'm bothered by it enough, I just go to the doctor. I'm always afraid of having cancer, having a heart attack, or going blind, and just losing my life to some sickness that I don't know about. But I'm also afraid of someone taking my life. I am terrified of being murdered in my own home. A drunk guy tried to break into my family's house a few years ago during a blackout, and it was the scariest thing I had ever been through. I made my family go to the local Denny's that did have power after the guy thankfully got arrested, and we stayed there all night with my dad periodically going back to check on the house to make sure everything was still okay and to see if the power had come back on. We didn't know if the guy had others with him or what, but it shook me so bad. It was the night before Halloween, and one of the people who worked at Denny's came in that morning dressed as Mr. Incredible, so that brightened my day a little. But what would really brighten my day was getting to see my then crush, now husband, at our church Halloween party, and my ego being inflated by him being all impressed by the pieces of my brother and I's over-the-garden wall costume that I had made. But I was really affected by the whole thing. I slept with my TV on as loud as was comfortable for everyone in my house. I had 2 different lights on at all times. I slept with earphones on with music playing, all because I couldn't trust myself without these things, because even though we had moved shortly after to a different house for other reasons, I was just convinced that it was going to happen again. Any sound I heard was someone trying to break into me. I started taking sleeping supplements because I literally could not go to sleep unless the sun was up. That hadn't happened to me since I was in high school and watching horror movies by myself in the middle of the night. Now that I'm married though, it's a lot easier to sleep at night, though I do still wear one earphone to bed because I wake up in the middle of the night, every night, like clockwork, and I get freaked out knowing I'm the only one awake. The thing about fear though is it's useless for me. I told my husband that one of my New Year's resolutions was to stop being afraid because I'm using so much of my time worrying about protecting a life that isn't being lived, and it's all useless. If I'm not worried about someone coming into my house and murdering me in the middle of the night, then I'm keeping myself up with thoughts of undiagnosed cancer or that I'm slowly having a heart attack. It's not doing anything except ruining my quality of life. It makes me sick, and it sometimes keeps me from enjoying the things that I should be enjoying. And it's showing that I don't have any trust at all in the God that I proclaim to have faith in. God's word says fear of man is a snare. Whoever trusts in the Lord is kept safe. He says, unless the Lord watches over the city, the watchman stays awake in vain. He says God is our refuge and our strength, a very present help in trouble. He says, don't be anxious. I know what you need. Seek me first and all your needs will be met. And worrying doesn't add any time to your life. It just takes time away. He said when Abraham was told he was to have children and Sarah was barren, no distrust made Abraham waver concerning the promise of God. He grew strong in his faith as he gave glory to God, fully convinced that God was able to do what he had promised. God is trustworthy and the only one that can control what goes on. I can't control anything. I can only trust God and do my part in being wise with the choices that he gives me. And my choice this year is to learn how to trust God practically and fear less. And besides, at least we don't live in a world where seeing a grandfather clock means you're gonna die soon. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed it. If you found it relatable, I'm sorry, but hopefully you found some comfort in the fact that you're not the only one. I plan in the future to have this be the time where I thank all my patrons and show any fan art people make of me, if people do ever make me fan art. But for now, I'll thank the people that have supported me and encouraged me to even make a YouTube channel. I want to thank my amazing husband and my wonderful parents and brother for always supporting me in my creative dreams and goals. Without you guys, I'd still be too scared to put myself out there like this. Thank you guys so much, and thank you for watching. See you in the next video.